Welcome to another Unitrend Certified Administrator course. We're going to be talking about data copy access, which is a subset of copy data management. In this particular module, we're going to be covering how we would be performing this from VMware and image level backups. There's some setup that needs to be done in order to make this available for your environment. You'll need to come to your virtual host, come into the configuration for your virtual switches, and we'll need to add networking. We'll need to add a new virtual machine switch, and it will be a new standard switch, and it will not have any network adapters. And when we hit next, it will confirm that we understand that we are not adding any network adapters. We then call it sandbox and add this to the environment, though obviously I already have this configured. From there, we'll come to the Unitrends UI and we'll create a data copy access job. You'll see that we're selected under VMware. I can open this up and then select any of the VMs that I'd like to be able to test. For example, my domain controller, a SQL server, and both of these are VM level backups, versus if I wanted to do an application server like the ERP machine, which is done at an image level. I'll then need to create a lab profile that defines where the instant recovery is going to occur to. It's booting on this host, and it's using this data store for storage. When we're doing testing, we live in the sandbox virtual switch, meaning that we won't conflict with the production network, and the machine will stay on the Unitrends appliance using the volume for virtual swap space. This is covered in our instant recovery video. But I can also use this job to fail over a machine, where it would put it on the real network and begin to copy it to the data store right away. Within this profile, I can also set up RPO and RTO tracking, RPO being how old your data can be. If it's being backed up at least once a day every day, it should never be older than 24 hours old. And the RTO is how long the machines can take to be booted and verified. In this case, I want to make sure everything comes up within an hour. It also will add a suffix to the end of the machine name. I'll change this to .dca. On the next page, we can create a schedule here for how often we want these machines to be tested. So I can have them tested every single night after my backups have completed. So assuming that everything finished by 3 o'clock in the morning, by 5 a.m. I should be able to test and verify that all my backups from last night were good. From there, we would need to define the options for the tests. My domain controller is my first server to boot. I know that that Active Directory tends to take a few minutes after Windows starts to actually become available. So I usually add a delay for Active Directory controllers, so it will wait 2 minutes after VMware Tools becomes active before it tries to run any tests. From there, I'm going to provide a service account that allows me to log into the domain controller as an administrator. Then I can set up tests on this machine. Those tests could be my own custom scripting, where I would call like c:/script.bat, or maybe a PowerShell script, things like that. I can inject after the fact malware scans through ClamAV. And most people are doing things like checking for SQL, pinging a host, checking Windows services, checking websites for words, or in this case, we'd be looking for the Active Directory service. And I can have multiple tests in here, so if I wanted to make sure that DNS was up as well, then I would move on to the second server that needs to boot. My application server needs the SQL server to be up, but SQL needs Active Directory to be up in order to log in under the service account. Then I would again come to my tests, and I would define that I want to look for the SQL instance, MS SQL server. This is the default for most. Then and only then will I want to bring up my application server after I've verified everything else is up, log in with the domain service account because I know Active Directory is running, and then I can add the check for the service for my application. Now this service check could be anything that's under services.msc. We would simply find the name that shows up here in blue and copy and paste that in, though a generic check is the server service, as all Windows machines will have that. So if we save this, you'll see that we now have a new job. And at any time, I can run a test, which would stand the servers up, verify that the services have started, and then tear everything back down and give you a report of how long it all took. We can see the reporting for this under Reports, Recover, Recovery Assurance, where we'll be able to see the most recent recovery assurance job. You'll see in this instance, we started the machines, we reconfigured them to put them on the sandbox switch, and then we power them on in the correct order as we move through. When we've checked all the services, we can tear everything back down and update a compliance report that tells you at a glance exactly how long everything took. If we come here to compliance report and generate this report here, you can see I have a job that is yet to be run, so it's not yet certified, but the previous job that was configured before has been tested and known good. This is how long each server took to boot, and this is how old the data is as of this moment. We also make this available as email reporting as well. I'll bring up a few examples so you can see what that looks like. You'll see, for example, here's our UB1 that we were just on. And this shows us it started the instant recovery, reconfigured the machines, validated the services as we moved through, then powered everything off, and gave us a report of how long it all took. And there's even a debug trace log here. I like to show this side just because it makes it really easy to understand what we're doing. We're just pushing a PowerShell script inside of the VM through VMware tools and checking to see if the services have started. This makes it very, very powerful for many reasons, since we're able to test and verify not only are backups good, but that the recoveries actually work and that services will come up in a particular time frame. But there is more functionality beyond this. Again, we do have our Instant Lab feature. If I choose Instant Lab, it would perform the instant recoveries, bringing these machines up from the latest copies that we have available. But if, for example, I needed to roll a particular server back in time, I could simply choose what time I want to bring that server up from, and it would bring it up into the sandbox network, isolated from production. That way I can verify whether or not it fixes the issue. So if somebody installs a patch on this server and I need to roll back and see if it fixes it, or even if there's a ransomware attack. Something that Unitrends is doing that's not necessarily obvious is that we're heuristically looking at the backup data that we bring in, looking for anomalies. We know what average looks like for a system, be it the change rate or how compressible and deduplicatable it is, and using machine learning, we can guess whether or not there may be something wrong with that backup. So if we see an out of the normal change rate or a very hard to compress and deduplicate backup because it's got a very high entropy or randomness value, it's an indicator that there could be encryption going on. So we would pop open an alert and let you know that we saw a risky backup. If you found that it was in fact infected, we can then roll those servers back prior to whenever that alert hit and isolate these machines, attach antivirus utilities to them through VMware, and verify that they're clean before we commit the lab back into production. Commit would move the storage off of the Unitrends appliance and onto the final destination storage that we defined when we made the job profile. The other option would be failover. Failover would bring the machines up immediately on the real network and start to copy the storage over to the final destination. This concludes our training on data copy access for VMware backups. If you have further questions, please check our guides on Kaseya University or contact the support team. Thank you and have a wonderful day.